Welcome everybody back to another episode of UnDisrupted. I'm Carl. Adam, you know, we recorded a few episodes prior to the election and now we are post-election. So let's dive in right there and start. And I know this could be, people could be on either side of the aisle on this, but let's talk about specifically, what does this election mean for education? What are your thoughts, initial thoughts just on knowing that Biden and his team have won, and they've already put out a transition plan as the recording of this podcast. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they have allegedly won. We have to make sure we're clear on that. You know, they are the projected winners as of today.
That's right. It has been called by multiple agencies and some state offices. But yes, for our listeners out there may be some of you that are still wondering, like, well, maybe it is or maybe it isn't. But yeah, as of this moment, I believe 290 electoral votes, and a big bunch of those, I think, came from a state where you're from, Adam.
Yes.
Georgia. What did you think about Georgia turning? Well, it looks like it could be, of course, recounts and everything else, but it could be slightly blue. That's different.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I can say, and this actually started at the midterms when we had our gubernatorial race, or gubernatorial race here in Georgia. And I was like, the governor or gubernatorial? We had that. It was a really big push since then to get as many people registered as possible and active in the electoral process. And so I think from this election, it gave a lot of people some time to actually research and see what all goes into an election. You know, it's more than just casting the vote. It's the fact that it doesn't just end on election night. So I think a lot of people are doing more research in the fact that, you know, you have to confirm the counts by each county, and then the state has to, and then, you know, then it goes to the electorate, and then they, like in December, where they have to go in. So I think people kind of knew it was a process, but one thing I think has become abundantly clear to a lot of people is that it's multiple layers to all of this. And I hope that our schools are really using this as a time to educate our students on the whole electoral process. Right. You know, not even just our high school students, but our middle school students, because some of them will be able to vote in the next election. So, you know, next presidential election, but then also that local election, which is really important in a lot of these cases as well, because, you know, we may have seen a flip at the White House, but a lot of the Senate races kind of stayed where they were. So, you know, it's just that thing to let people know how all this works. And we're really seeing this year, every vote counts and matters.
Yeah, I saw someone tweet the other day. It was like, we focus so much on math and reading and education, but maybe if anything, this has shown us that we need to really continue to focus our energy on civics and government and history. And, you know, because we see a lot of that in the making with the huge vote count numbers that we have. And what's scary is there's still 100 million people that didn't vote in this country. So why? You know, that would be an interesting action research project for some entrepreneurizing student out there that wants to go out and figure out, why do 100 million people not vote in this country, you know, for whatever reason.
I mean, and I think a lot of it, we have a lot of folks who are used to doing things on demand. And that's why I think you saw a lot of people voting by mail, but then you've also had, you know, when you look at our American Idols or, you know, all these other fan shows, you can vote through an app or vote on your phone. So I still wonder, you know, how far away are we from having some kind of secure electronic voting that's going to make this voting process a little bit easier? Because yes, it is. You're still going to have the technology gap that's there, but you know, I think by having a more secure electric kind of process, yes, it can be hacked and all that stuff, but guess what? A paper can be thrown away or somebody else can fill it in. So, I mean, there's always a way to quote unquote hack a process. Right. You know, there've been hacks before computers. So, you know, I don't know. That's my thing. I just wonder what role technology is going to play in that next evolution of voting.
Yeah, I think we're close. I think, well, my wife and I predicted that by the time we're like retired, like in our 70s, it's be about 30 or 40 years from now. I said, it might be sooner than that. Because I know like Iowa, they were trying some digital voting during their 2018. And during the primaries, they did some testing of that. I mean, I think what you could do is mix it up. You send everybody voter a card. That's like a Starbucks gift card. It could also be a Starbucks gift card, who knows? And you scratch off the back of it, and there's your 16-digit code that you scan in with your phone camera, and then you read your face with your driver's license, and then you thumbprint or something, you know, all that technology is there. And then, like you said, with the equity gap, you want to make sure that there's availability for that for those that don't have smartphones. So you'd have to put it, you know, in kiosk or something we have similar right now. But yeah, maybe we're 16 years out. I don't know. I think we'd have to do it in one of the non-presidential elections first to see how it goes.
But I can say, we saw a lot of long lines in our early voting here in Georgia, but for the most part around our state, it went pretty smoothly on the actual election day. And I think there's a lot of people took advantage of early voting and, mail-in voting, because we really want people to vote, like on our podcast, put us at the top of the charts, 5 stars.
5 stars, people. Maybe we get Aharon, who does the graphics for us, by the way. He does a great job on our graphics. Maybe we can have him do a little 5 stars right across the screen there. We're going to challenge him. See how much you can throw on this. Well, speaking of people coming in person, voting in person, or just doing things electronically, let's pivot to kind of our main topic of the show. And by the way, we'll get more into the election, I'm sure, as the year kind of goes on and as we get through the inauguration and all of that. What does it really impact for education? The Department of Education, of course, who will take over
connectivity
for Betsy DeVos, how's the FCC going to help with that connectivity that Adams just said. Yeah, all those things that we need that have been brought to light. Hopefully there'll be some progressive work coming out of that department. We'll see. But speaking of progressive work, I think this episode is going to drop probably just a few days before ISTE. So ISTE, for those of you out there that don't know, ISTE, it's like the biggest, I don't know, what do you think, Adam? The biggest like ed tech probably conference in the country, not in the world maybe, but in the country. I think BET in London is bigger, but there's like 20 something thousand people that go to that.
Yes, it's amazing.
And they had it in Anaheim, in June, of course, and then the Rona came and washed that away. So they had to move it out and moved it. They punted it to November. So it's happening the week after Thanksgiving. So as of this recording, it'll be just a few days from now. And it's all digital. So it brings to light a few questions. We've been talking, you and I are doing a session actually called Nailed It with Tana Reuter out of Wichita Public Schools, which we actually interviewed her boss just recently. Like our version of I guess a dessert failure, but only with technology. We'll see how it goes. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think? What's the future of conferences? I mean, is this digital version? I mean, ISTE's still making you pay a pretty good chunk. It's not as much as I think the regular rates are like $350, but this is like, what is it, about 180 or something like that, or maybe 200 to go. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's interesting because right here in Georgia, we're having our state GA ETC conference now. And it's, I think they've reduced the rate to like $50 or I think it was like 25 earlier and 50, but it's this whole on-demand kind of model. It's very difficult, honestly, to pay for a conference that's going to be virtual or on demand. And it's like, okay, what am I paying for? What am I getting? I mean, when you do have some conferences that are doing a free model. I mean, I know FETC is one that they're, normally it's, pretty large conference. And this year, I think next year, technically, in January, it's going to be a free conference that's going to be in a digital format. So it's like, okay, why? And as a system, when you're talking about paying, it's like, hey, you're going to pay $300 or $200 for a virtual conference, and somebody's sitting there telling you, well, is there something else that's free? Are you going to be able to hear some of these same things at a free virtual conference? But then when do you find the time to do that? Because you can't do it during your workday. I mean, that's one thing about a conference. You actually take the time away from your work. There's that scheduled time where you can have that professional growth, also meet up with your peers, discuss some of those same problems face to face, lay out on paper. You get to see some of these vendors and see all the new tech that's coming out. So, there's always going to be a place for that, I believe, because there's something lacking in this virtual format.
I want to give a shout out to the guys that ran Fall Q, Pam and Joe over there. They did a great job at Fall Q that just ended last week. I want to say they had almost 2,000 people registered. They dropped the price, like you're saying, with JATC, very similar format. But what they did with their timing was, I think they kept, so their sessions were always starting after 4 o'clock. And they went, I think, Thursday, Friday after 4, from like 4 to maybe 8 or 9. And this is Pacific Coast time. And then the weekend they did full sessions on Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday they did a wrap up, but it was the same thing 4 to 9. Cause like you're saying, if people are at work, they're not gonna be able to go to the sessions, and you're not gonna be able to necessarily take a day off. But I also wonder, like, budget wise, I mean, I remember we used to have a pretty decent budget for like, okay, this is what we're gonna pay for people to travel to these conferences. We had a conference budget. So what's happening? I mean, of course, education's all up in the air right now. So what's happening with that money? I mean, have you heard of any Are they spending on other things? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
selling an online course right now that's actually doing pretty good. I mean, people are looking because it's on demand and they can watch it kind of at their own pace. And I feel like maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. What are you seeing?
Yeah, make sure you check the link for the class in the bio.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can follow mrhook.it/RLC. It's the remote learning coach coming to you live. No, but seriously, and FRS members use this code. Actually, I need to put a code in there. That would be good. Yeah, so
but it's one of
that
those,
money's there, but what's happening to it? Yeah.
well, so here's the thing with education and money, and it's all about use it or lose it.
Yeah.
You mentioned you put those dollars aside, and if systems see that as wasteful spending, because let's be honest, schools are still in need of technology. They're still in need for devices. They're still in need for hotspots. They're still in need for staffing. So if you have, let's say, 10, 12, 13,000 sitting around here and some kind of travel conference budget, for the public, if they're looking at some people have lost their jobs or their taxes have gone up, whatever the case may be, they're looking at like, how can you go off to California for this fandangled trip? And, we don't have enough Chromebooks or whatever the case may be. So, I think it's very important for the districts to really emphasize the importance of that professional growth for staff members, that it doesn't get you looked at as this a slush fund that it's going to be a conferencecation where yes, I said conferencecation.
New
where
word.
People are just going to hang
another
out.
Graphic there. Spell that one out. Confrontation.
Confrontation. Or people are just going to use this as a taxpayer trip to go hang out with people and party. So it definitely has to be a time where districts are really showing the importance of this professional growth. And even, with this, you have your Title IIA, which are dollars, that are set aside for professional learning. And so it's one of those things where it's a lot can be gained from having your people leave the district, because they're putting work behind them and they're actually focusing in on learning, because we all know it's so difficult to focus in on something new while you're at work. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's hard to make that disconnect because you're always feeling that you have to, I'm in district, so I have to answer that problem or I have to do this thing. So you got to go. And like I said, you got to get hands-on in a lot of these showrooms to see some of these, the vendors and the things that they're having out there, and to make those connections. That's something that I think is always going to be important.
How are you think right now? I'm hearing from my vendor friends that they're just like, they're not very pleased with obviously the way it's going, because they feel like the vendor halls were a big draw, but there was already kind of I don't know. I feel like there was a disillusionment with those vendor halls from a lot of vendors. They had started to kind of say, maybe it's not worth the bang for the buck to pay, I don't know, $10,000 for a tent or something, a 10 by 10 square, so people can come by and get a free stylus. So then it went virtual, and now you've got the same problem, right? Now it's even worse, because now it's like, now I'm trying to get attention from people that are already on screen overload. How do I get them to listen to me and talk about my product for 15 minutes? So you gotta get creative. I don't know what
it's almost like it's almost like how we're reimagining school. We need to have that same kind of mindset where it goes to the conference, with that whole reimagining of conferences. I think some places have kind of had that down. I know for years, ISTE has done this, and other conferences where you do have some of in the larger rooms, they'll record those sessions and in their own demand. So that's kind of like a perk for being a member, that you can, view these other sessions. I think that's a really good. One thing that I would like to see possibly from all of these conferences when we get back to a face-to-face is merging this, instead of having like a face-to-face with the presenters afterwards. Maybe you can do like some Zoom kind of breakout room sessions and kind of have that reserved time for speakers, so, because I know we did our thing at TCA. We had a lot of folks that wanted to, pull our ear and talk to us about our session. And having some kind of Zoom breakout or scheduled Zoom time with the presenters would be something good, where you can have that time where you can have some follow-up questions. So I think it's a way to merge those two together when we get back to the face-to-face, to allow more opportunities for those presenters and the attendees to connect.
I love that idea. I conference people out there better be listening. That's a great. I mean, I can see you're right. You come off stage and you go off in this little room and you have like overtime with Adam and Carl. You know, it's like the little now's your chance, and you got a bunch of people excited to talk to you that have been watching online. There was a conference I went to in Lubbock, right in the middle of June when all this was still happening, but Lubbock's numbers were really low. And Matt Hawley, shout out to Matt. He put on this event called Confluence, and what he did during the event was he decided to hybridize it, which I know some conferences have looked at doing. So essentially he spread out the rooms, made everybody pretty much had to be in, 6 feet or farther apart, big giant rooms in his high school building. I was on stage. And then what he did is he basically had a Zoom for every room set up with a little camera, and you could like see the presenter's notes or his slides and then still interact. And so what I noticed is some presenters were uncomfortable interacting with the online audience. They just spoke to the crowd in front of them. That I try to walk over every now and then and just like go talk to the cameras, like, what are questions you guys have, and I think that could be something just going forward that we always do, like have a live running link, and maybe like you said, for members, they get access to it. You can have access to all this stuff too, because then it's saving, you can get more teachers going, because you're saving money on the travel. But I don't know what the bottom line is, but
yeah, that could be the extra money where it's like, okay, you get the regular, sit and get conference style, but hey, you can pay for the overtime. So, if you add on that, then now you get your breakout. See, you know what? I'm gonna stop giving out these free ideas. I'm gonna need them to, and you heard it here first on the UnDisrupted with Adam and Carl podcast, all these ideas. So if you go to a conference and they're doing this, I want my royalties.
Hey man, you remember the dueling keynotes that we did that year at LearnFest? Yeah, I started seeing those kind of crop up. They were always, for those of you that don't know what this is, it was we took presenters and made them keynote at the exact same time with their headphones on, essentially, and they had to duel against each other. So we had Matt Joseph versus Ann Cosma. I mean, it was great. It was interesting. Julie Wilcott versus Phil Hintz. I mean, it was, anyway, after that, I started seeing more and more of that popping up, and I was like, wait a minute, but you can't really, I mean, education, we give it away. And honestly, if it makes the conference better, and you and I never have to pay, no, that'll never happen. There we go.
I know a couple great guys that'd be some great keynote feature speakers.
There you go. But let's talk about that too, the payment part, because I don't want to disclose their names, but I did talk to, there's a couple of great presenters down here in Texas. And they, I saw them walking around TCA when you and I were there last year. And they had this big wagon, and I was like, what are you doing? I was like, well, we have 10 sessions or something we're doing. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And like, why are you carrying that wagon? He's like, there's no green room. There's no like place to put this. We just got to carry it with us. And then they paid full price. Well, they got a little presenter discount. So they paid like, I think 75%. And I was like, so you're paying money to do 10 sessions. And I was like, at some point, when do conferences start? And some are doing it. I mean, like GATC, I think does. There's a lot of that in FETC. A lot of them cover you, or you're at least free. But like ISTE this year, you have to pay to present virtually, which is kind of really interesting. I mean, what are your thoughts on making presenters pay?
I mean, that is crazy. I mean, there is a national conference that one of my team members, we were planning on presenting at face-to-face initially. And of course, everything's virtual. And so I got the agreement. It was like a little DocuSign to go, sign to present. I'm like, great, it's gonna be virtual, no problem. And then it's like, you're still going to have to pay, to go. And I'm like, I'm gonna pay, a couple $100 to attend a virtual conference that I'm providing content for. That's crazy to me. And I understand everyone, because I've sat on conference committees and I worked with GATC here. So I know, you still have bills to pay. You still have to kind of keep things going. But, without your presenters, you have no conference. Yeah. And, when you're giving the presenters a $25 discount, I mean, come on, it's like, come on, son.
Yeah.
I mean, you really think that's going to benefit someone? And I think I talked about this before. You also are limiting who you can have present when you're looking at what the dollars amount to, because not everyone has those resources to pay to presents. And so you're getting some of the same faces, bringing the same stories. You're not bringing the diversity to your speakers because though a lot of those other speakers don't have the resources within their district to go. And they, in some cases, they're paying out of pocket. I mean, I know multiple times early in my career, I had to pay my own entrance registration to go to the conference that I was going to present at, because I really wanted to go to the conference. And then also, I wanted to present at that conference. Yep. And that's not right.
My last 5 years in the district, I took vacation days and paid my own way to go, only because I also felt like I was promoting myself somewhat. And so I didn't feel comfortable having the taxpayers pay for that. But let's be honest, you and I, you hit the nail on the head. You and I we can get covered from somebody, or someone will pay for us to go, or we'll pay out of our own pocket. You hit it right there. I mean, it's those teachers that have the great new ideas that all of a sudden are going like, I can't afford $200. So we're going to lose a lot of really good ideas because of it. I just hope some of these conferences out there listening change their mind. And because I mean, some of the best speakers, I love just kind of stumbling into a room and just hearing someone talk and be like, wow, that's an idea I've never even heard of, like from a teacher that teaches like a computer lab in the middle of nowhere, California, all of a sudden is sharing this idea about these great things. And then it turns out to be this guy named Game Boy Drew, who now keynoted Q. But I mean, like someone like him, who I didn't, like 5 years ago, I saw him and I was like, oh, he's but he was first time speaking. I mean, you got to get those people out there too. I just think they have great messages. So maybe Future Ready should sponsor some of us. We should figure out a way to do a scholarship or something. I've seen some conferences do that, the scholarship idea. I may be funding for at least one other speaker for ISTE, just because I know her district won't pay for her, and she's co-presenting with me, and I told her I might cover her, but it gets, it starts adding up in price after a while.
But that, once again, you have to, especially now that things are virtual. I mean, it gives us the opportunity. This is something that we should be disrupting. We always talk, this podcast is undisrupted, but this is definitely something that should be disrupted. I mean, we really are true to what we're trying to do as educators and in this K-12 space, and really bring different thoughts and ideas to the table. This is a time to disrupt things. This is a time to really come up with a new way to do it. So, we talked about the death of the conference, and it just should be the death of the conferences that we've been used to. And this is that chance to reimagine and make it something different. It's time to move the cheese. We talked about how vendors were having some issues with how things were before, and not getting enough foot traffic in some of these spaces. This is that perfect opportunity to do that, but we still need that face-to-face, because, hey, I miss seeing you, my brother. No, we haven't had a chance to, we haven't seen each other in a while, which was crazy, because I think we got a chance to see each other shortly before.
Right before this happened.
No, it was in the, so I did the football. I went to the game and all that stuff. But, it's been a while since we've seen each other, and, we all have missed our family and our friends. So we do want to get out from this whole COVID umbrella and go to a conference, but it should not look the same way it did in March.
Let's
it should be different.
Burn it all down, and it could be like a phoenix rising from the ashes of Arizona. That was election humor there too. No election humor. I think we'll put a bow on this episode, but I think for those of you out there listening again, we'd be curious. Adam and I are curious what your thoughts are on all of this too. And I will say that we have a Facebook page now. We got that launched since the last episode. So jump and join on that Facebook page. Of course, the UnDisrupted hashtag on Twitter. I'm monitoring that as much as I can. So if you have things you want to mention, just put them in that hashtag there, and we'll see if we can get it on there. But we, of course, want to thank our listeners out there for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, give us a review. We're looking for those 5 stars as much as you can. We may give you a shout out on a future show. Go ahead and drop something in the comments. I went back and looked at our comments, Adam, just to see, because I heard we had like up to 2,000 people downloaded, which is incredible. We don't even care if you listen, Sweet. Honestly, just download. But just download. You don't have to listen.
Yes, download.
But I saw a couple people drop some great reviews. Like, it was a great first episode, I think is what someone said in July. So let's get some better reviews, or at least more expanded reviews would be nice, and we'd love to. And like that,
we want to hear what you guys think, especially this conference of the death of the conference, and what do you think the new conference should look like? If you're planning your conference from scratch, give us those ideas. We want to crowdsource, we want to share, we want to disrupt things. We're UnDisrupted podcast, but this is one of those things, one of those times we are trying to be disruptors.
Yeah, the goal with that disruption, of course, is to make everything better. And in this case, the conference needs to be better. So thank you again for joining us. This has been
you're just a pot stirrer, aren't you?
Right here. You can see it on the shirt now. There is a chef behind there. You see him? He kind of looks like me. Anyway, this has been the UnDisrupted podcast brought to you by Future Ready Schools. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3 on Twitter.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, we are better together.
And we are better undisrupted. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Amazon Web Services.